this offseason.
Okay, well, here we go.
If Brandon Allen is as impressive as they think he is, would the 49ers be open to trading Trey Lance at some point this offseason that Trey has improved? Do you have to wait a little while? Would you do that more before the deadline? Would you do it at all? The way quarterbacks get hurt around here, you got to be careful because you wind up playing 3 just about every year except for the Super Bowl year of 2019. So is Brandon Allen, is that the kind of guy you want to cut? And now that you're going to a third QB, emergency QB, if Trey's not one of your top 2, then you can't run the Bison personnel package where he comes in to run like he did, at the end of the first half in the home opener of his rookie year against Green Bay. Only time he could come into if he's QB3 behind Brock and Sam Darnold, then he's not up on game day unless it's an emergency. Then you can't run Bison personnel with him. So, then Allen would be more of a guy you would develop and have as your third quarterback.
What do you think? I mean, the interesting part there is, okay, so you typically have, every team's a little different. Not every team, but there's some teams will have 2 quarterbacks. Other teams will have 3 quarterbacks. They got that new rule that if the first 2 guys get hurt, you can bring that third guy in. You don't have to make him active on game day. So now you got 3, but Brandon Allen would be number 4. And what Greg's referencing there is that Brandon Allen, who was the backup to Joe Burrow last year in Cincinnati, he was the number 2, signed here. And technically at the end of training camp, you would spend all this time using, developing him or whatever. He's in OTAs. He's now going to camp with you. And you almost assuredly would cut him. And then he would have to go through waivers. Is it worth investing the kind of I guess it's like, what would you rather do? Waive Brandon Allen or trade Trey Lance and keep Brandon Allen? That's I think that's what he's kind of suggesting.
It's wild to me that we're comparing the 2 players. The name of the game with Trey Lance is upside, right? That's what we're talking about. That's what we are looking for. When you're doing a direct comparison with him and a guy that offers little to none upside, it's a very weird comparison to me. By the way, I did hear that he walked it back, and I do find it very interesting.
Oh, he did.
And it feels like there has been an entire offseason with comments like this about Trey Lance, right? This is a weird comment. There's no way he should be getting compared to Brandon Allen, especially when it sounds like, by all accounts, him and Sam Darnold have been fairly even, right? From everything we've seen this offseason. That's how everybody seems to be describing.
That'll be my assessment as well. Very close.
And it's like Papa didn't compare Sam Darnold to Brandon Allen. It was only Trey Lance. So if that comparison, if it's happening, which I think is somewhat ridiculous, I don't get it, Larry. I don't see it. There's upside to Trey Lance. I don't know the upside to Brandon Allen. I think Brandon Allen's a fine quarterback, but I think that Brandon Allen is one of like 20 different quarterbacks that fit a similar mold with a similar skill set that are interchangeable. I think the name of the game with Trey Lance is that he has a skill set that's not interchangeable if you develop it correctly. I don't know what's going on. I do think the most interesting point to me in this, and going back to what I was saying about him walking it back, is that we've had an entire offseason of these weird statements about Trey Lance from a variety of different people connected to the 49ers in a different way. And it feels like the 49ers are starting to push back where these guys are walking back these statements, right? Rappaport walked back the statement. Greg Papa has been saying some outlandish things about, or not outlandish, excuse me. That's not fair for me to describe because he is more connected than me. But he has been saying some things that indicate that Sam Darnold is very much ahead of Trey Lance in his mind since the day Sam Darnold was signed, when he said Sam Darnold could be the starter the day he was signed. And so I do think it's interesting that he did walk this one back finally, the similar way as Ian Rappaport walked one back finally after an entire offseason of wild statements.
Did Rappaport walk it back? I thought on draft day he was kind of like, I expected him to walk it back, but he didn't.
No, he didn't walk back the trade because that was a report, right? And John Lynch didn't even deny the report. But he walked back this statement that he kept saying that Sam Darnold's the starter in the case that Brock Purdy doesn't start. And he said the 49ers keep pushing back on that, saying, like, what about Trey? Well, Greg Papa has been saying Sam Darnold's the starter if Brock Purdy doesn't start since the day he was signed, right? He's been saying that. And now for the first time, he walked back he didn't walk it back according to the car gods. People were saying he walked it back in the comments, I thought. That's my mistake.
I don't know if he did or didn't because I mean, not that I don't listen to them because I mean, I've got friends at the station. I listen to all kinds of things. But
in the case that he didn't, forget everything I said. In the case that he did, I do think it's interesting that it feels like the 49ers are pushing back about this finally because, man, it's been a lot of stuff that they could have pushed back on a while ago, and they didn't for whatever reason.
I mean,
they let it linger. Right.
I mean, John Lynch is on Twitter. He could have shot down the Ian Rappaport rumor.
Oh, he did walk it back. There we go. So my points stand. Forget the fact that I said forget everything I just said.
Randall says he did walk it back. Michael Monahan says, I would expect Trey to be a little off while working on a new motion. Takes time to get comfortable. Right. I don't think Trey's looked off at all. I mean, to me,
he's looked good, right?
I think he's looked good. I really do. I think he looks good. Now, George Kittle I think Kittle gave us the most honest assessment thus far. He said, hey guys, honestly, and I'm always a little skeptical when people say, honestly, it's like,
Larry, I've heard that and I'm not going to lie to you. What am I supposed to do with that? He
said, honestly, guys, he's looking
season how good he was looking and how happy he was and how much potential he has, blah, 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 blah. Now you're going to sit and tell me, honestly, he was not good last offseason, but this offseason, guys, he's improved. Like, what am I supposed to do with that information?
Well, and also it's like, just because somebody was better doesn't mean that they're good. It just means that they were bad before. I mean, there's so much unknown, but what he did, the part that I felt was really honest because I'm there and I'm watching it was George saying, hey, every now and then Trey will let one, whatever he said, I forget what the verbiage that he used, but let one fly or one will get away from him or something like that. And that's my assessment too, is that Trey's generally been really accurate in this camp, as accurate as Darnold. It just occasionally, like he hit the back wall one time, he throws one down into somebody's feet. Occasionally he'll have a pass that's more errant than other passes.
Right.
But overall, I would say there's a lot of similar. I'm standing there and I'm watching it, and to me, they're very similar. They're very similar. They both throw the ball well. Trey struggled with throwing spirals last summer. Seems to have ironed that out. He throws a much better ball now. I was watching one play where he was on like the 15-yard line. It was like a 3rd and 8 pass, and he threw a fade to like the middle of the end zone. The kind of fade that you typically see to the back pylon. And it was just a beautiful ball between hands right there, dropped it in the bucket, couldn't have delivered it if you walked it over there any better. So I've seen him make some incredible throws.
Let me ask you this in general, just the amount you've been around football, because this is the part about Trey Lance that I'm having trouble putting together, because in theory, I'm actually I'm not necessarily I don't know what to make of Trey Lance, right? Like it's just an enigma on an enigma because the sample is so small. But he checks all these boxes from a tangible and intangible standpoint, or so they tell us. Some of it we can visually confirm, right? His arm is really strong. He is big. He is athletic. Like we can see all of those things, right? And then he does present himself very professionally. He is very smart, very well spoken. So we can get an idea that he's a very intelligent person. But do you think a quarterback competition, given where he is in his career, and one of the first things everybody says about him is he hasn't played football, right? And what I usually associate with somebody who hasn't played football is I think the reason teams prefer veteran players is because veteran players have a self-awareness of who they are, not only on the football field, but in life, right? They know who they are. They know how they fit in. They know what their strengths are. They know what their weaknesses are, and they know how to play to their strengths. And then you have a guy in Trey Lance who he's like a kid, right? He's got this entire possibility of the different things he can be. And it's like you have to put him out there on the field so that he can figure out who he is and how he fits in, what's his skill set, what is he good at relative to his peers? Like he needs that year to do that. For Josh Allen, it was 12 games as a rookie. He got it. Jalen Hurts, they did it more systematically, but they did it for him his second year and a little bit at the end of his rookie year. Do you think forcing Trey Lance into a quarterback competition where it's less about seeing the scope of his physical ability and it's more about your execution within the scheme, so he has to fit his skill set into what the Niners are asking their quarterback to do? Do you think that's the best thing for his development? Because honestly, Larry, I want to be very positive because I think he continues to put in the work to make strides, and I think he has made strides. But I think that for him, the best solution of his career is going to work out is if the 49ers did what they did for him last offseason again. And they really embraced him as the guy, and they let him go out there. They lived with the mistakes. They lived with the downs, because there's a process to him growing through that you cannot replace. Do you think that putting him in a quarterback competition with a guy that's, started 55 games in the NFL, do you think that's the best thing for his development? Because I'm struggling to put this one together.
I don't even think it's about his development. I think it's about the football team. It's like you want to see him develop, but that's not the priority. The priority is what's best for your football team. And I think the competition is kind of inevitable because there's only one starting job, and they're gonna be competing for it. What I see is just, I think Trey can do everything that Brock can do. Mm-hmm. I just think Brock does it with more consistency, and I think ultimately what their evaluation is that Brock's an offense led by Brock Purdy will score more points than an offense led by Trey Lance, because Trey's going to have a series or two where there's some inconsistency and you're going to have to punt. Because there's going to be a check down, a layup on second, and they're going to run on first down. They're going to gain 2 yards. They're going to get to that always familiar 2nd and 8. And then they're going to design a layup pass for him, and this one pass he's going to throw it hard, and it's going to go off the guy's fingertips, or he's going to throw it high or low, and now you're going to be staring at 3rd and 8 because you didn't get any yards on 2nd down. I think they're just looking at that going, Brock is going to be more consistent. It's not about upside, it's about consistency. You only have, let's say, 10 drives in a game.
Let me ask you this then, right? Because I think that's a really, really good explanation, right? And you did mention you felt like Trey could do what Brock could do. I
definitely do.
Do you think the difference there then in the consistency is about gaining and building up his confidence? Because I will say this, one of the reasons that it's not even a talent thing. What I like about Brock more than the other 2 quarterbacks is right now he just feels like the most confident of the 3. To me. And I think that there is a lot to that, because I think being the quarterback of the 49ers is really hard, Larry. I think what Jimmy Garoppolo went through for 4 or 5 years, because we kept hammering home his deficiencies as a football player, which definitely existed, and we had to talk about them. I don't think we talked enough about how good he was personally handling the fact that 2 years ago he was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. This year he took them to the Super Bowl, and they lost in the Super Bowl, and they're talking about replacing him this offseason. Then the next offseason, he gets hurt, and they do try and replace him. And now he's playing with this rookie. He plays hurt, and they're 3-5, and John York has flown down to California, and he's at practice, which indicates that there might be a little bit of pressure on Shanahan, because he was 3 losing seasons out of 4 at the time in 2021. And Jimmy Garoppolo plays hurt, and they go on this run and all of that. Like, I think that you need a lot of confidence, and you go through a lot being the quarterback of the 49ers, because I think mentally it's very difficult being the guy that always gets blamed when you lose and never gets credit when you win. That's the 49ers quarterback, right? He's the ultimate shield for everyone else when they lose. We never blame Kyle Shanahan, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa.
It's because
of the quarterback.
It's because of the way the thing's televised.
Right. And then when they win, we talk about how good Shanahan is, how good Deebo is, how good Kittle is, how good Trent Williams is, how good McCaffrey is, how good Ayuk is, which they're all really, really good. But we don't say, hey, the quarterback played great, right? Like, that's generally what the discourse is. And I think Purdy mentally is better equipped to handle that. So do you think it's just a confidence difference? And do you think there's an opportunity for Lance to gain that? Or do you think this is just kind of a bad situation with how the timing was set up for what he needed And at some point, the 49ers just need to admit that to themselves, and you think they're going to admit to that to themselves and move on regardless. Because I'm at kind of an impasse, because I feel like how can you move on from a guy that you've only that's only played 4 games and you have that much invested in him? But it doesn't necessarily feel like, to me, reading the tea leaves of this offseason so far, Larry, that the 49ers are thoroughly invested in this idea that they can turn Trey Lance into a great quarterback. I don't think they're against it. I don't think they don't believe in him, but I also don't think they're completely embracing the belief in him. I think they're just sticking in the middle. And if Trey Lance turns into a great quarterback, they'll jump back on that bandwagon. And if he doesn't, they've also hedged enough to get themselves out of it.